Hello, everyone. My name is Erica Moody, and I am one of the elementary site coordinators in the Office of School and Community Partnerships. And I have my colleague here, Latanya Gaines Montgomery, who works with the middle secondary candidates. And we are going to provide some information for you as clinical educators for the spring 2020 semester. To begin, this is kind of an overview of the things that we will be looking through in this online orientation session, and give you kind of an overview of the student teaching semester, some of the paperwork requirements, some roles that you will play throughout the semester. We'll talk a little bit about the schedule and different assessment periods and instruments that you'll be using, and then we'll talk about EdTPA, some tough conversation support with that, and then finally growth mindset and in-the-moment coaching. So before we jump into this, I know that sometimes we kind of throw out these acronyms and terms that you may not know what we're referring to, but just so you're aware, the ST is the student teacher, CE would be you. This term used to be cooperating teacher, but the state of North Carolina has changed that to clinical educator. If you see on any documents SC or FSC, that's the faculty site coordinator. That is our role. That used to be university supervisor. And then OSCP is the Office of School and Community Partnerships. That's the office that we work out of. And then EdTPA is a performance-based assessment tool that your student teacher will be completing during the semester. It is now a requirement for them to get a teaching license in the state of North Carolina, and we will talk a little bit more about EdTPA later in this presentation. So the first thing that I want to make you aware of is we have a student teaching handbook, and it gives serves as a reference with some information about the student teaching experience. It goes into detail about the role and the responsibilities of the student teacher, you as the CE, and then us as the site coordinator. Our handbook is found on our website. And so our website is osacp.uncc.edu, and then there's a tab that you can click that will lead you to the student teaching handbook. There are many parts to the handbook. Some of it is about the year-long internship, which is the semester before student teaching, so that's obviously not where you want to look at for right now, but then there is a portion that is all about the student teaching experience, and so that's where you'll want to go if you have questions about that. As a clinical educator, you do receive a stipend, not nearly enough money for all the work and the time and the commitment, but it's a small token to say thank you for allowing our candidates to come into your classroom. You will receive your honorarium at the end of the student teaching semester. That honorarium is $200. That is a little different if you are part of the pilot program with TEI. But for everyone else, that stipend is $200. You do have to complete paperwork. The stipends only come direct deposit, and so on our website, the osacp.uncc.edu, there is a tab for clinical educators, and on that tab you will see the form that you will have to complete to receive your honorarium at the end of the semester. There's also a confidentiality statement that is available there. And essentially, we are asking that you maintain the student teacher's assessment performance data as confidential information. And so we will require that you complete the confidentiality statement. And if you want your honorarium, we will ask that you complete the paperwork to receive that. So as we get started with this presentation, we kind of want to give you a little bit of information about your role in this process. You are not necessarily their colleague. A mentor is a better word. And so your job is to support them and give them specific feedback, explicit feedback on what they need to do. Ultimately, the goal of this internship semester is to make sure that they are ready for their own classroom. And so we support the candidate by giving feedback regularly so they know exactly what they need to do to improve, and devoting time to planning and having those regular meetings to set goals and talk about things that can be done to reach those goals. Think about how you share feedback, and we will talk a little bit more about feedback later in the presentation, but sharing things in a positive way, like I want to help you get better, and here's how. So think about that as you are engaging with your candidate throughout the semester. Some other things about your role, reassure them that we all started out this way, and so sometimes they can feel a little overwhelmed by seeing their CE get up there and nail the lesson, but they are brand new and it didn't go so smoothly, but reminding them that we all started this way. Please review their lesson plans at least 2 days prior to the implementation. That way you know what they are teaching your students. And then as appropriate, provide adequate solo time where they can just be in there with the students. And that's, of course, as appropriate, and that might be something that you do maybe more so later in the semester as you feel more confident with them being along with the students. And then finally, communicate hope and optimism about being a teacher. There's a lot of negativity surrounding being a teacher, but we want to be sure that we're sending a positive message about this important work. So a few things about what research says about you as a clinical educator. You as the CE, you have the greatest influence on their development. And you as the CE are one of the main factors that determine how effective the student teaching experience is. So every day as you are engaging with your candidate, think about it's not about the program at UNC Charlotte or this or that. It's really you. You have the greatest impact. Those other things are have an impact as well, but you have the greatest impact. And research also shows that the student teachers really do emulate the things that they see you doing. So be thoughtful and mindful that they are watching and they are wanting to do it just like you. So we want to be sure that we're modeling good practices in this experience. So now we're going to shift gears a little and talk about the schedule for the student teaching semester. Student teachers are now on the schedule of the school district in which they are placed. They are no longer using the UNC Charlotte schedule academic calendar. So that means when the school district that they're placed has spring break, that's when they have spring break, not UNC Charlotte spring break. And so that also includes teacher workdays. All teacher workdays are required for student teachers. Even if you as a CE don't attend, they must also be there for all of those teacher workdays. And even if you're taking it off, you can leave them a list of things that they can do, or they may have other things that they are working on. But they are following the school district calendar, and all workdays are required. Throughout the semester, the student teachers are going to gradually assume teaching responsibilities. And so that will be something that you and your student teacher and your assigned site coordinator will talk throughout the semester about what is a sensible pattern for your student teacher to assume instructional and non-instructional duties. So the next slide will show you kind of how that looks. Typically, in the beginning of the semester, student teachers will observe and assist in the classroom and then gradually start adding on responsibilities. And student teachers are expected to add on instructional responsibilities like teaching, math, science, reading, writing, but they will also be adding on non-instructional responsibilities with the grading or escorting the students to lunch or recess if they're in elementary school, different non-instructional responsibilities that are expected of teachers. So then they will gradually add on those. And then when we get to that full-time period, that's when they have assumed all instructional and non-instructional duties for at least 20 consecutive days. I know that the visual says 4 weeks minimum, but we do want to make sure that we count to make sure that it is actually 20 days at a minimum. It could be more than 20 days if needed, and that will be something that your assigned site coordinator will also help you in kind of determining what's a good schedule for that. And then after the 20 days, they would gradually start to release those responsibilities back to you, and then finally do some observations of other teachers at the school toward the end of the semester.
This is a little different. The pickup and release schedule is a little different for middle grades as well as dual candidates, dual meaning special ed and elementary ed combined licensure. With both undergrad, middle grades, and dual content areas, they will be getting licensed in 2 content areas. And because of that, they will student teach in those 2 content areas. And so instead of the 20-day schedule, we follow a similar schedule where there is a gradual pickup and gradual release, but it is done in 2 separate content areas. So let's look at a graphic of this. So for the undergrad, middle grades candidates, as well as the dual, they will start out and they will have 15 days. So although the graphic says 15 to 18 days, that overlap will also count within the 15 to 18 days. So they will actually have 15 full days in one content area. And then they will hand that responsibility part of the time in that content area and switch over to the other content area. For example, if they are teaching math and science, they will start out and do 15 days in math. At the end of the 15 days, they will begin to let go of one half of the day's responsibilities. So they will be observing in the other content area and teaching half day. And then they will totally switch from that science content to that math content for another 15 days and gradually pick that content up and then release that as well after their 15 days. So they actually have a total of 30 to 33, 34 days of teaching because they have 2 content areas versus the 20 days in elementary ed and secondary.
Okay, so now we are going to talk a little bit more about the calendar and the schedule. And so this slide is a little different if you are undergraduate, middle grades, or dually licensed in special education and elementary education. But for the rest, there will be 3 assessment periods. And so your assigned site coordinator can provide you our semester calendar. We call it the green calendar, and it breaks down the specific dates for each of these assessment periods. And there's also an observation matrix that your assigned site coordinator can provide for you as well. And this will kind of give you more information about what takes place in each of these assessment periods. But generally speaking, as the CE, once your student teacher has started to assume instructional responsibilities, you will complete the observation feedback form, which we'll talk about in a few slides. You will do that at least twice per month. So you will identify a date that you will set with the student teacher, and you will do at least 2 formal observations of your student teacher using the OFS twice per month. And then you, as the CE, will also complete the STAR, the Student Teaching Assessment Rubric, which we'll look at in a few slides as well, one time during each of the 3 assessment periods. Your assigned site coordinator will schedule dates in which he or she will come out to complete the same kind of process, and additional observations may be scheduled as needed. So now we'll talk a little bit about feedback and then look at how we give feedback using some of the assessment tools that we utilize. These are all of the tools that we will go through over the next few slides. And again, these are tools in which we use to document performance and evaluate the candidate. And we talk through these tools with the candidate so that they are aware of things that they're doing well, and then we set goals for areas that need improvement. So talking about feedback first. So feedback is going to be critically important, and we tell our candidates that they are paying tuition for this semester, so they are essentially paying for you to give them feedback. And so we want to be sure that we are providing that feedback, but we want to be thoughtful about effective feedback. We don't want to overwhelm them. As experienced teachers, you might see 10 or 20 things that might need improvements, but we want to think about, how do I select the things that are the highest priority? And so thinking about 3 to 5 main points, and think about the process. Think about how you phrase the feedback so that it is not, well, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, but it is solutions oriented, and that you think about how to model the things that you want to see improved with your candidate. What effective feedback is not, it is not vague. You want to be specific so that they know exactly what parts of the lesson they did really well, but then what parts of the lesson they really want to focus on. It is not the scattergun approach, which we say trying to cover everything instead of focusing on a key few areas. And we want to be mindful about how we're phrasing it. Here's what you need to do, or this is what I do. We want to kind of stay away from that and think about how do I phrase this in a way that is inviting, that is supportive, that is solutions oriented. So thinking about what research for decades has shown us is that sometimes CEs can have unrealistic expectations of their student teacher. And so I think that comes back to we've done this work and we've been teachers for a while, and sometimes it's hard to remember what it was like when we first started out. And so sometimes CEs know the things that their candidate needs to work on, but they're just overly cautious because they don't want to upset the student teacher. They don't want to hurt feelings. And so we want to be thoughtful about this because, again, they are paying for this feedback and they need this feedback so that they are ready for their own classroom. So when you find yourself kind of being overly cautious because you don't want to say things that might upset them, think about they need to hear this honest feedback, but we've got to think about how do we phrase that in such a way where it's supportive, but it's specific, and that we can kind of celebrate progress as we're seeing them improving in these areas. One of our assessment tools that we're going to look at now is the observation feedback form. And so the OFF is what we call it for short. It can help you to kind of phrase the feedback in a way that is supportive, that celebrates things they're doing well, that highlights some areas where we want to target, and then that gives them some next steps. And so we'll look at this actual form now. And so as we look at the OFF, the top part, of course, you would just fill out date, name, things of that sort. And then in box A, this is where you will decide with your candidate that you're going to teach, for example, they are going to teach, for example, a math lesson from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And so when they are teaching, you're just in box A and you are just filling in notes. You can do that bulleted, you can do it narrative. There is no set way, but box A can expand and grow so that you have more space to put notes. And that will just be where you list, these are things that I saw. I've seen CEs that put timestamps, they kind of do some scripting, they kind of just write general bulleted things. There are a number of ways that you can do that. But box A is going to be really your dumping ground for your notes about what you saw when you observed that candidate in that lesson. Then once the lesson has ended, you really want to think about what were some strengths that we want to celebrate. And we always want to be thoughtful about, while there may be many things they need to work on, we want to make sure that we are giving them things that they are doing well and encouraging them to keep with those things. So you might list some specific things that you saw. Your enthusiasm was great, materials were prepared, the pacing of the lesson was appropriate, developmentally appropriate, or whatever it may be. Specific things that you saw in box B that you want to celebrate and highlight with the candidate. Then in box C is where you're going to list some specific things that you saw that need improvement. And so I see a lot of times in box C, clinical educators have a tendency to start giving suggestions, but they didn't write what you actually saw. So for example, box C, you would not say, consider using a timer to get the students transition from this part of the room to that part of the room. That's a suggestion, but what did you actually see? So what you might have seen was that transition from this part to that part of the lesson took a long time. So that's what you would want to put in box C, that the transitioning took a while. Then in box D is where you list the specific suggestions to address the things that you saw in box C. And so that's where you can insert, I've seen teachers that put in some website links, or this is a great video that aligns to this standard, or here's the countdown timer that you might want to consider, or whatever it may be. That's where you'll consider putting about 3 to 4 suggestions for addressing the things that you observed in box C. The bottom part of the OFF is for those that were part of the TEI pilot program. And so if you were not a part of TEI, if you're saying, I don't know what TEI is, then you know that that is not something that you need to worry about. And so the main thing that you will need to focus on if you are not in TEI would be boxes A through D at the top. If you are in TEI, then you can complete the bottom portion as well when you do coaching with your student teacher. So this is just an example of a clinical educator that completed an observation feedback form on her assigned student teacher in a past semester. And so this just kind of gives you an idea of an example. It certainly is not an exemplar to say it has to look just like this, but it just gives you an idea. You see that there are some timestamps in there, there's some quotes, different things with that. And you see that she's listed some things to highlight as strengths, some specific observable things that were noted. And then in box D, you'll notice, if you scroll a little, that there are those specific suggestions to address the things that were in box D. And a great thing about this form, most of the site coordinators will be utilizing this form in a Google folder, is that the candidates can always then go back and reference what was that website or what was that piece of feedback that my CE gave me. And so that we want this to be kind of like a resource for them to always be able to go back and reference. So one thing that I did not note about the OSS, and I just thought about this, is the OSS is intended to capture what you saw in an observed lesson that day, that time that you agreed on to observe with the candidate. The STAR is what we'll talk about next. The STAR is the Student Teaching Assessment Rubric. That's what it stands for. The STAR is holistic. It is big picture. It is how is my candidate doing overall. And so we're going to take a look at the STAR and the different components that you will see. So the first 2 pages just provide you some directions on how to use the STAR and the OSS. And there are directions for you as the CE, and then there are directions for us as the site coordinator. If page 3 of the STAR is for your student teacher to complete to self-assess, and so there will be nothing for you to do on page 3 either. But if you scroll to page 4, this is where the rubric actually begins. And so the STAR is broken up into 10 elements. There used to be 32 elements, but it has been greatly condensed. And so there are 10 elements to this instrument, and you as the CE will only complete the first 9. And so I'll show you where that final one that you don't have to complete. But to start off talking about it, number 1 is learning environments. This is essentially classroom management. Is it a learning environment that's conducive to learning? Is it safe? Is it a good environment in terms of well managed? And so what you'll see through the rubric are 4 levels. You have level 1 emerging, level 2 developing, level 3 proficient, and level 4 accomplished. And then under each of those titles of those different levels, you see a little part in there that talks about the reliance that student teacher has on you. A level 1 says that the candidate is heavily reliant on you for that specific element. So that element being classroom management, maybe as soon as a student might be off task or something, they're looking at you immediately because they are very reliant on you in establishing a learning environment. A level 2 says that the candidate is somewhat reliant on you as the CE. And so that might look like a candidate that attempts maybe to address something with the learning environment, maybe didn't have good success with it, and so then they're kind of leaning on you to kind of jump in. A level 3 is proficient. This is the target level in all of the elements where we want to shoot at least at a minimum by the end of the semester. And so it says that the candidate is able to do this element with minimal assistance. Maybe every once and again you need to address something or support, but generally speaking, they are able to do this thing with minimal assistance. Then there is a level 4 accomplished, and it says that a candidate at a level 4 needs no assistance. They are not reliant on you at all. And so those kind of break down the different levels, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so what you will then do is go through the rubric to actually read the description under each of those levels. Again, the goal is at least all 3s, the proficient level by the end of the semester. In order for a candidate to earn a 3, they must be doing all of those things that are in a level 3. If they are doing the first 2 parts, but not that last little paragraph there, then they are not proficient. The same rule applies for a level 4. if a candidate is earning a level 4 in learning environments, then they must be doing all of those things that are highlighted on your screen. If they are not doing part of one of those or any of that is missing, then they are not at a level 4. So a level 3 and 4 is kind of all or nothing. If you're not doing it all, then you are not at that level yet. When it comes to distinguishing between a level 1 and a level 2, which is emerging and developing, it's going to be where it best fits. So they may be doing the first two parts of a level 2, and maybe they're not doing that last part there, but if you feel like that's where it best fits and they've got two of the parts included, but maybe just not that last one, you can decide that they would be better fit in the level 2 rating. So 1 or 2 where it best fits, but level 3 or 4, it has to have everything. So after you've read the rubric and you've decided about where your candidate best fits, then you will scroll to the adjacent scoring profile. You'll go to learning environments, then you'll go to that first assessment period, and then you'll click on the line and you'll enter a 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever is reflective of your candidate's progress in that area at that time. There's also a space for you to include comments. And so we're not requiring that you write comments for every section every single time, but it is a good idea to list some specific things maybe that the student teacher could continue to work on to increase that rating. And I've had some student teachers that actually go up to the rubric and copy some language right from the rubric to say, this is the thing that I'm not seeing yet. And so essentially, that's how this process will go. You'll scroll back up to the rubric, and then you will go to the second one, which is student differences. You will read the rubric. You will decide where does your candidate best fit, and then you will scroll to the adjacent scoring page below, and that is where you will record your rating for the second one. So as we continue to scroll through the rubric, you will see that the pattern is rubric, scoring page, rubric, scoring page. So you will read through each of these, and you will continue to indicate your rating on the corresponding adjacent scoring page. When you get to this page here, you will see that element 10 says in the highlighted section, evaluated only by the site coordinator. So that will be your reminder. If you aren't sure which one of these is it that I don't complete, that is the one there. And then if you go to the adjacent scoring page, the CE rating line has been completely removed. So that's another way to help you to remember. As you keep scrolling, there is an observation signature page. Your assigned site coordinator may print this for you to actually do a physical signature, or if you are a distance education clinical educator, you may utilize this to do an online signature. Your assigned site coordinator will review his or her expectations for this page here. And then as you continue to scroll, the last pages of the STAR are what we call the STAR evidence guide. And so this is just a resource in helping you to assess your student teacher using the STAR rubric. This aligns with the earlier part of the rubric, and so you can read some of these key questions, and then there are some specific artifacts that you can review. And so this is just another tool to help you when it comes to assigning ratings on the STAR of your student teacher.
So the middle grades and dual student teachers will also have a STAR. Theirs is a little different because they have 2 content areas or 2 licensure areas. And they will, the ratings are still the same, a 1 to a 4. It starts out just like the traditional STAR student, STAR evaluation. But they will have 4 assessment periods, as they will be doing 2 observations in periods 1 and 2 in one content area, and then they will do 3, period 3 and 4 will be the other content area they will be observed. They will also do a self-evaluation here on this page, and then the scoring pages are very similar to the traditional STAR. It starts out with the elements and the indicators, and then the scoring page as well. So if you are a CE that is the second content area for an undergrad, middle grade candidate, you would be filling out boxes 3 and 4 for assessment periods 3 and 4. Same thing with dual candidates as well. And then the evidence and artifact guide is also at the bottom of this document as well. So the only difference between undergrad and dual candidates is the 4 periods instead of 3.
So just as a reminder, the target level for student teachers by the end of the semester is a level 3, which is proficient. The STAR is big picture. It is intended to kind of measure the overall progress of the student teacher, not just what happened that day when you sat down to do it. STAR scores, you'll see as you go through the STAR, there are some things that are observable, like the content knowledge and learning environment, but there are other things like lesson plans and assessment and collaborating with parents and other school personnel. Those are things that you can't see in a lesson. And so you should use all available evidence in determining STAR scores. You look at their lesson plans, you look at how they've been participating in PLC meetings and other things like that. And just remember that evidence guide is at the very bottom to assist you in assigning ratings. And as I said when we were going through it, in order for them to be at a level 3 or at a level 4, they must meet all of the descriptors in that column. If it is between a level 1 emerging or a level 2 developing, the student teacher should meet the majority of the descriptors that kind of best fit. And so we are asking that you please not use any like plus or minus or decimals. It's just a 1, 2, 3, or 4. And there is no 0 or non-applicable. If you don't see the evidence for it, that's okay, but that would just be probably reflected at a level 1, and then we'll just set goals for us to continue to work in that area. So again, how these two documents work together, the STAR, holistic, you would assign a rating of 1 through 4, and you would do that as the CE one time during each of the 3 assessment periods, or if you're a dual or middle grades undergrad, you would do it 2 times in each content area. If you are using the OSF, remember that that is more narrative. It is about a specific lesson. That's where you're writing out strengths, areas for improvement, and next steps as far as setting goals for where you want them to go there. And then that is twice per month that you will be completing that. The other document that your site coordinator will talk to you about throughout the semester is the CTC, the Certification of Teaching Capacity. And so this document here is one that we will be using to mark areas as met or not met. And so you will see that many of the areas of the CTC also align to the STAR. And so as your candidate has met certain things that are on this document, please go ahead and check it off throughout the semester. And so your student teacher cannot be recommended for a teaching license from UNC Charlotte without having all items checked as met on this document. And on the second page of the document, there is a place for the principal or the designee to print, sign, and date. So they will not receive a licensure recommendation from our university without having everything checked as met and having all signatures signing off on this document. So it is a very important document. We don't want to wait until the end of the semester to start looking at it. Please be sure that you are looking at this throughout the semester and checking it off as met as needed. The other document here is the Assessment of Professional Dispositions, and this is just a very simple one-page tool that we use in the College of Education here at UNC Charlotte. And so your student teacher is basically assessed on their professional disposition. And so we want our student teachers to be checked at least at the meets expectations level on the Assessment of Professional Disposition. And so you will complete this by the end of the semester as well. And so if you ever have concerns about your candidate's ability to have everything checked as met on the CTC, which is the document we looked at on the previous slide, or if you have concerns about their professional dispositions, please notify your assigned site coordinator right away so that we can make a plan to work on these concerns that might be emerging. Next thing we will discuss is attendance. So with attendance, student teachers are duplicating your schedule, whatever the hours are of teachers at your school. Those are the hours that the student teacher has to adhere to as well. They should be, as appropriate, attending all professional meetings and different things that that teachers at the school are required to be a part of. If student teachers are absent for any reason, they need to notify you right away, and then they should also notify their site coordinator. And so what we ask of some things for you is to let our candidates know when there are meeting dates and times. They should be at all staff meetings, and they should be at any kind of curriculum night, PTA night, any outside of school events that are required of all teachers. That is also an expectation of student teachers. So go ahead and let them know of those dates. Sometimes they have to leave school early to attend classes or seminar, and so on those days you may have to resume teaching duties. Please share your contact information with them so that they can notify you if there is an emergency. And if a student teacher misses more than 5 days this semester, they will have to make that time up. So we will ask if you can help them by allowing them to teach a little longer if they've missed more than 5 days. So the next thing is lesson planning. So all student teachers have to write lesson plans as classroom teachers have to do. And so student teachers should be getting their lesson plans to you 2 days in advance of when they are supposed to teach that given lesson. And the reason being is we want to be sure that you as the CE, as the teacher of record, that you have had a chance to review what they will be teaching and give them feedback. And so we add that 2-day buffer in there so that you have that time to review and give feedback. Weekends don't count, so we are not asking you to spend your weekends reading lesson plans. If they're teaching something on Monday, they should be having those plans to you for Monday, certainly by Wednesday, Thursday morning at the very latest, so that you have Thursday and Friday to review the plans and give feedback. And so your role in that is to initially provide guidance with planning. And so we will talk about some things that you can do to support your student teacher with planning in just a few slides. Another key piece is please be sure that you are reading the lesson plans. And I know that throughout the semester, as they add on more responsibilities, that can be a challenge because it will be a lot of reading and reviewing plans. But please be sure that you set aside time to do that and give them feedback. We want to make sure that the students that are in your class are receiving quality instruction, and we want to make sure that your eyes have glanced and read over the plans before that lesson is delivered. Student teachers are expected to use an approved lesson planning template. There are several lesson planning templates, and so this may vary depending on your program area versus, elementary versus middle high or secondary. Different program areas may have different templates, and so your assigned site coordinator will review this information more in depth with you. There is some flexibility with these lesson plan templates and expectations if the school district requires a set template for certain types of instruction. And so your site coordinator will talk you through this. If your school or school district has some set requirements, please be sure that you communicate that to the site coordinator so that you all can make a plan for addressing that requirement. EdTPA must be completed using the UNC Charlotte approved lesson planning templates only. Your student teacher has been made aware of this, so they know this is an expectation.
Along with planning, we are encouraging you to do some co-planning with your student teacher. As previously stated, students will gradually pick up responsibilities, both non-instructional and instructional. And when it comes to instructional lesson planning, we ask that you would sit with them and gradually release them to plan. This gives them a lens into what you do and how you plan your lessons, and allows them to be able to ask questions so that they can successfully plan for your students on a daily basis on their own. So we ask that you would begin with them by you planning and them being able to reflect on your plans by asking you questions, and then move to one plans, one assist. So you may be designing the majority of the lesson, but allowing them to have some responsibility in also planning a task, a lesson, a do now, a warm up, an exit ticket, those things of that nature. And then we ask that you move to partner planning, where you guys are kind of sitting together, looking at your standard or looking at what you will focus on for that particular day, and then plan a lesson together with all the necessary components. A great way to support students with EdPPA, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, is to sit with them and look at their EdPPA lesson plan. And as you're planning together, make sure that you're helping them to address each one of those components of that lesson plan and answering any questions that they may have. Then we ask that you would then move to the one plan, one react. So they become the main person planning, so they will be the teacher planning, and you will react to their plans by giving them feedback based on all of the previous work that you've done to support them in planning. We also have two intervention pieces of co-planning, and that's parallel planning or team planning. Should you be in a position where students, you have gradually released them to plan, but your student teacher is struggling to plan effective lessons or is struggling to integrate some of the things that you have discussed with them previously, then please let your faculty site coordinator know, and they will join in the team planning and parallel planning to kind of support you as well as the student with lesson planning. Should you have any questions about co-planning, please feel free to ask your faculty site coordinator.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about student assessment and data records. So student teachers are expected to keep grades and learn how to use data to inform instruction. And so what we ask, your role in this is to share with them, how do you collect data? How do you analyze it? How do you do the things that help you to allow you to get a better idea of how your students are performing on various tasks and assessments? And so we ask that you kind of share that with them and then gradually involve them in that work. Also, it's a great opportunity during the student teaching semester to involve student teachers in preparing report cards or progress reports. Obviously, they are not able to go in and do those, but you can certainly involve them. This might be, sitting down together and talking through your grading process and how you do that on the report cards, or giving them a role like where they might write the comments and you get those comments and kind of review them, and then you use the comments the student teacher wrote and copy those into the report card. There are many different ways, but it's a great opportunity so they know how that process works and they are prepared when they are a beginning teacher. Also, assist the student teacher in collecting student work samples and having those conversations about what you do, the steps you take mentally when you are analyzing student work and performance. So if you have any challenges, concerns, red flags, whatever it may be, please don't wait until your site coordinator to their until their planned visit. You can always reach out to your site coordinator at any time with any issues. Your site coordinator can only help you if they know that you need help. So please don't feel like you've got to wait until a visit. You can always reach out with a question, with a concern. And we as the site coordinators can help you. Either sometimes we can just directly jump in and address a concern that you may share, or sometimes you just may want our help in letting you kind of feel prepared to address the concern yourself, and we can kind of coach you on maybe some things to consider in having some of those conversations. But we are here to support you. We just would like to know so that we can be as supportive as possible. Please be sure that you are documenting things throughout the semester. If they are tardy, if they are absent, if lesson plans aren't being submitted, whatever it may be, documentation will be critical. And so please be sure that you keep up with things and just keep that line of communication open between you and your site coordinator. By the end of the semester, we will ask that you sign off on that CTC, that's that document where we're checking things as met or not met. And so each candidate has to have everything checked as met to be eligible for a licensure recommendation. And so that will be signed off as met, and the principal will also have to sign that as well. So please, again, if you have concerns about your candidate's ability to have everything checked as met and to be signed off, please let your site coordinator know right away. And keep the documenting and the OSF that you're doing twice per month, keep up with those things. And then there will be an opportunity at the end of the semester to complete a survey to kind of give some feedback on your experience hosting our candidates.
So now we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about EdTPA. EdTPA is a teacher portfolio or performance assessment that is used and has been used to replace Praxis 1. Students will still have to take their content Praxis or Praxis 2, but this project has to be done during student teaching. And so we're going to go through some need-to-knows about this. This is not a tell-all guide, but it is just a little bit of information to kind of get you acclimated with the process. So here are some things to keep in mind. Your responsibility or help in EdTPA would be most helpful in helping student teachers not include students in the video that don't have the parent-guardian permission form. So making sure that as you video for your students, that they are not including students who have not completed the form. Also, in just videotaping the student teacher's lesson plans. And we'll talk more specifically about how to help with each task. So what do I need to know as a clinical educator about EdTPA? The main thing is that it is consequential, meaning that they have to pass EdTPA in order to get a license to teach in North Carolina. So this is obviously a critical area that you will want to support your students with. This is time sensitive because they must submit by a particular date. For middle secondary, it's March 12th. For elementary, it's February 27th. So we would like your help in getting this started in the classroom as far as pacing and picking up as soon as possible. All right, so student teaching is the gradual assumption. We've already kind of gone over that. With that said, pacing with the EdTPA calendar is a must. So your student teacher knows the date for submission. They also know the support that they will receive in both seminar as well as class. But here are the main pieces that they need to know as far as preparing students for their EdTPA video. LED candidates will focus either on a small group or whole group. Special ed students will pick just one student to focus on. And middle secondary students will pick one block to focus on. So although there are 3 or 4 blocks that you may teach, they are only going to do EdTPA with one block of students. So they'll need assistance with deciding which group or class, and then the content that will be covered during the filming window, they will need support with that. The filming window is from February 3rd through February 21st for middle secondary candidates, and we advise that they do that to ensure that they have enough time to submit and work on all the additional components that will be necessary for them to submit their project. So there are 3 tasks within EdTPA. Task 1 is lesson planning, task 2 is the video recording, and then task 3 is student assessment or assessment of student progress and performance. Within task 1, our students need help with the following areas. Basically understanding accommodations and modifications such as AIG, IEP, 504s, etc. Knowing how to differentiate not just instruction, but also through the assessments. Prior knowledge and skills that students should have before they teach their lessons. Some of the assets that students bring into the classroom, such as their cultural, community, personal assets, developmental assets, their ability levels, and then helping them to just know your students in general so that they can connect and relate to them and be able to plan lessons that will accommodate their learning style. They also really need to know the what and why of planning, which is why co-planning is so important. They need to know what you're planning and why you're planning it to help them understand what they should be planning and why they're planning those things. So please continue to help them with that if you've already started with that. If not, if you need assistance with how do I co-plan, what should I say, what do I need to know that goes in those plans, you can speak with your identified site coordinator. In task 2, students need help with selecting the class to use. So again, they're just choosing one class or one group in elementary school. And if they are a special ed student, they're selecting one student. They will need help with selecting the people that will be involved in this video. They do have to distribute and collect permission forms for those students that will be in the video. You don't need to put students out on the day of videoing that do not have forms. They just need to be in an area where they won't be included in the video. But they are still welcome to participate in the video, but just not be filmed. So we can hear their voices, and that's okay. They will need you to help them to record. They need to have multiple recording device options, so make sure that you check with them on that. And please make sure that they are in the video. In order for them to submit the video to Pearson, they have to be in the video so that it can show that this is the actual student, or this is the actual voice of the person that's submitting this project. Also, we want you to capture different settings as you video them. We want you to capture whole group, small group work, one-on-one, all of those different things. Even though students will only submit a 20-minute clip or two clips that total 20 minutes, we ask that you film them for all 3 of their entire lessons so that they will have multiple options to select their video clips from. We also ask that you video for this length of time, because if a student does not pass task 2, we will look at other video options that they've already recorded that may be able to be resubmitted for the project. Task 3 is the assessment task. They will need help with selecting assessments that show student knowledge and skills that have been applied. So this cannot be standardized, no standardized assessment. This needs to be a performance-based assessment or a writing assessment, something that has a rubric where the student can be scored and given specific feedback on ways to improve. Students need help understanding feedback delivery methods. So as they are observing you or co-planning with you, they will need some examples of how you give feedback, what you say, why you say that, and how you use your rubric to help give feedback so that they are aware of how to do these things moving forward. And lastly, students need help with knowing when and how to use formal and informal assessments in their lesson plans. Here are a few things that you can and can't do. This is not an exhaustive list, so we ask that you would see the handout that's on the website about EdTPA and supporting, and you can also get a one-page handout from your faculty site coordinator if you would like more specific information. So here's some can-dos. You can look at lesson plans and ask questions about their lesson plans. You can help with lesson planning, give them resources and feedback, and all those great things prior to submission. So that's like a mock kind of trial walkthrough with lesson planning, giving assessment feedback, and watching their lessons. You can co-plan and co-teach and co-assess with them in the early weeks to get them comfortable with teaching, and also a video for them. Some things you cannot do. One is tell them what to put in their lesson plans that they are using for their EdTPA project. You also cannot tell them which video clips to use for their EdTPA project. And then finally, you can tell them feedback and give them examples of feedback in early weeks, but you cannot give them feedback or tell them what to do and help them make their rubrics for assessment 3. Anything that they're using for the project, you really do not want to give them explicit directions on. It's okay to ask them questions and kind of put them in the mind frame of what needs to be included, but you cannot tell them what needs to go into any pieces of the task. Tough conversations. During the semester, you may have to have some tough conversations about performance with your students. We will be offering a webinar on February 25th from 5:30 to 6:30. The links will be going out to the webinars for this semester very shortly if you have not already received those. And so if you would like more information on how to have those tough conversations or build your toolbox on having tough conversations, not just with your student teacher, but helping them to have tough conversations with parents, we would love for you to attend that follow-up session. Now we're going to talk very briefly about growth mindset and coaching. This semester, as you are working with a student teacher, you will want to ensure that they understand the need for a growth mindset. And growth mindset basically focuses on the improvement of performance through the lens that talent intelligence, abilities, and all of those things are developed through perseverance, working hard, effort, feedback, and implementing that feedback. And so, what you want to do is help them to treat questions and challenges and failures and other obstacles as an opportunity to grow. And so, the best way to do that is to praise the process, not the person. So, when you're giving feedback in order to build a growth mindset in them, instead of saying, I like the way you did this, you would say, the way you did this was effective, and I know that because, and then give evidence of that. So you want to praise the process and what the student is doing versus them as a person. This helps them to not take the feedback personally. Also, celebrate mistakes. Like, this is what you did. This is what you did well, but these are the few things that if we tweak these and work on these, this will go much better for you in your next lesson. So always having a positive way to encourage and build them up in practice and performance. Also, lesson plans and activities that encourage collaboration. So allowing them to collaborate with you, collaborate with the teacher that supports students with IEPs, the resource teacher, the ELL teacher, having them to collaborate with them to get other ideas of how to reach their students would be great so that they can grow in those areas as well. And then, of course, using rubrics and grading systems that reward growth. And so we do that by using STAR so that they can see their growth throughout the semester. Growth mindset is a necessity for not only giving feedback, but for doing some in-the-moment coaching. And in-the-moment coaching is just as it sounds, in the moment while they're teaching, you're kind of doing some coaching. There are several videos and examples that we will go through in a webinar. On January 21st, we will hold our first webinar on in-the-moment coaching. Our follow-up webinar will be March 17th. We will also do in-the-moment coaching. And if you attend that, we can kind of walk you through some examples of how did you sideline or silent signal, some guidance, some huddle whisper, and some co-teaching slash kind of tag team teaching to support student growth throughout the semester. One note that I want to make clear is that in-the-moment coaching is great, and we want you to do this on a daily basis. However, when you are sitting to do your OFF, you want to make sure that you are only observing and not giving any in-the-moment coaching signals or cues or support. You are basically watching them doing the OFF to ensure or to see the progress in what they're able to do on their own outside of the practice and support that you give them in the moment. So again, webinar January 21st on in-the-moment coaching. We would love for you to use this. Our student teachers in the past have said how much this has supported them in growth, in their growth during this semester. And so if you'd like more information on that, we would love for you to attend that webinar. Thank you so much for agreeing to work with our candidates. We thank you for being a clinical educator and setting the stage for what would be the beginning of one of the greatest steps that they're taking in their lives, which is becoming an educator. We truly appreciate your time and your dedication. And if you have any questions outside of this webinar, we welcome you to reach out to your individual site coordinator. After watching this recording, you are required to view and take the quiz to get CEU credit for attending this webinar. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day. This isn't the webinar.